cell. That's the pupa which is about to come out, and so on and so forth. So you have a lot of information, and this is something that you have for Singapore as well, but we have it in a arranged in a way in which referencing is much easier, and of course organizing this for other purposes, more serious scientific or educational purposes, is also much easier. And if you look at the maps, it shows each individual spot is a particular spot record, meaning an individual record. And this was in a place called Biligiri Rangaswamy Temple. This was, let's say, in Manas Tiger Reserve National Park. This would be in Namdapha, I suppose. Yeah, Depa Namdapha, and then these are in the south. And the red magenta spots here are the Western Ghat subspecies, and the blue one, of course, is the Himalayan subspecies. And we have known these subspecies. We also knew there was one in the Himalaya, exactly where it occurs, at what altitudes it occurs, in which specific localities it occurs. None of this was easily accessible, and none of this was fairly extensively documented. Because of these mapping modules, we can now document it much better. I know this has not been done for Singapore, right? How many dozens or hundreds of butterfly watchers do you have? It's a tiny island, 336 species, not many. You are out every week photographing butterflies, taking all the observations. If you do this in Singapore, in a couple of years, you will have a pretty dense map, occurrence map, seasonal occurrence of butterflies, everything. One of the reasons why I wanted to come and talk to you about this is that India is very large, highly diverse. Getting to a stage where we have detailed maps like this for every species is going to take us many, many years, several decades in fact. For a small country with a small butterfly fauna like yours, you could get to a dense map like this in seriously a couple of years. And you should seriously consider getting there soon, because longer term data sets you have like this, and sooner you start accumulating them, more powerful it is going to be in the long term, where you can see how populations are changing, how conditions are changing, how butterflies are changing. So that would be an awesome resource for your country. And as I said, it's much easier to create for you because of the smaller butterfly fauna and smaller biogeographic area you have. I mean, everything. You can travel to any part of Singapore in a day and come back home for a nice meal. When we go to Northeast India and many parts of your Western Ghats, which are very close to us, we have to travel for a day to 2 days to get to those places, and then we start working. So it's much harder for us because of the extent of the land we have and the species we have. So think about it. I think you should really take this up. That will be an amazing resource for your country and for butterflies in general. Alright, so that's one thing. And identification I'll skip. Status habitat habits. Here this is all the months and all the different states of India in which this butterfly has been reported on our website so far. And this gives the actual number of spot records, and here at the bottom, when you consider all states, it shows population numbers. So as you can see, October is the best season for this butterfly. It's most common in that season, even if it occurs more or less throughout the year. And you probably do not have anything in July, because most people don't go out for butterfly watching to its habitat in July. It's raining heavily, there are landslides, people might get stranded for days, and therefore people don't go. Doesn't mean it doesn't occur in July, we just don't have spot records here. So once we point out this kind of gaps in knowledge, then we can perhaps target those areas, target those species, and try to get data. But still you can see how the populations fluctuate throughout the year. For this species, there is a single population peak in September, October, when the populations are going up, and they're several degrees more common in October compared to the rest of the year. If you asked anybody before we started compiling information, nobody had this kind of information for India, and now we do it for every single species for which we have a species page and a decent number of a decent number of spot records. And that's a beautiful way of parsing out your data. If you're interested just in a particular state, Karnataka for example, you know those are the only months in which it has been recorded, and potentially in Karnataka the flight periods might be different from in Kerala, where microclimate and hilly conditions might be very different, and if we might have a completely different picture there. But that kind of picture can be created when you have this kind of data, and more intensive gets, more meaningful it gets. If you, yes.
Sorry. So the rule as a percentage of the people who contribute this information, of how many of them are citizen scientists?
Everybody, almost everybody.
Everybody.
So that particular,
So
this particular species page, I have contributed my images to it as well. But most of the records are from citizen scientists, from regular
Who
citizens.
verifies the identity is accurate?
Me
Yes,
and several other people.
So a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, which is why we don't have millions of records here. Otherwise, we could have at least a few 100,000 records here by now. Because if you go to Google has what Flickr photo album. Flickr has a lot of pictures, but if you look at identifications there, it's a mess. And people use different names. People also treat butterflies differently. Some might call it species, some might call it subspecies, some don't mention subspecies, others mention species. Some people might use a Thai butterfly book for their identification and will put up a species name of a Thai species because they think they have found it in India. So we have all sorts of things. To avoid that, we peer review everything, which is why we only have 37,000 images and not several hundred thousand. Yes.
To follow up on that question, is there a set template that you share with all the citizen scientists to make your work simpler?
Can you please remind me in 10 more minutes, or whenever we are done with the actual website? I want to show you how we do this. It's quite interesting.
You're iNaturalist.
Huh?
iNaturalist.
I know iNaturalist, yes.
So you get a lot of data also.
We can get data because that's Creative Commons data. Ours is a copyrighted website, so we don't allow people to access the backbone data set, database that gets generated as images get added. Unless they want to come and talk to us, they want to collaborate with us, then we are of course happy to share all the data. If somebody comes up saying, you know, we want to develop a small app for our particular area and a native language, we would say sure, feel free to use images. But for any other use, people have to come and talk to us. So this is copyrighted material, which actually is a reason why a lot of people are interested in contributing images there, because they know that they won't be stolen online.
How do you differentiate between subspecies based on morphology or molecular level?
I will tell you a little bit of that later. So again, please hold on to that question, a very important question, but I'll answer that after I give you intro to this. So under larval host plants, you can see the plants that these things feed on. In this case, it's a single plant. So you can click on a plant and see what it looks like. So if you are trying to look for their caterpillars, you know what you should be looking for, and that's a fairly nice feature of this website, and I'll show you with a few others and a few of their references. So this is the most complete species page on our website right now. So there's a lot more information, which is not true for a few other examples. For example, this is lesser gull, Sephora melina. This is the Andamanese subspecies. We have only 3 images there. For the northeastern one, we have quite a few. You have to keep scrolling a lot before you get to the end of it. But also notice that they have tremendous variation. This is what I was talking about earlier. This and this is the same butterfly, female and male of course. And then you have this and this, again the same butterfly. You have between the females, this is a wet season form, that's a dry season form. Okay, and within on the underside you have, let's see, that's a wet season form, that's a dry season form. Some are much more marked, some are much more yellow compared to others. this is an even more extreme dry season form than this, has absolutely no yellow and much fewer dark markings. So you can see all of this morphological variation based on these, and this is the Western Ghats variety, which has much more dark marking on the underside. So on one page, basically you can look at all the variation, and that's the beauty of this particular website. It's very good to look at variation, both from an amateur perspective, when you're just trying to identify your butterfly that you might have seen or you might have photographed, but also for scientists who care about variation, who want to study coloration from a scientific perspective. This is a wonderful gallery through which they can learn a lot. And for professional naturalists and scientists like me, gathering up this kind of information has proven to be absolutely fantastic. I knew butterflies, I thought pretty well earlier. I know them way better now, because while we were peer reviewing everything and looking at this, I have discovered so many things that, I mean, many of these color forms were not even properly known or documented, and now we have a lot of images representing those color forms and representing all sorts of variation there. So that's one of the most prominent features of this website. One thing that makes this particular website quite popular among people is that we give proper citation. So here I am one of the authors because I've contributed the early stages to this. Saji has also contributed images of early stages to this, and Hemant Prashant. So anybody who contributes either information, textual information, or contributes new records, either major range extension or early stages, which is kind of rare information that's not easily available, we give them co-authorship. So each page may or may not have authors, depending on this any textual information and early stages or not. But at least 345 species pages have authors because they are early stage images. And whenever people have contributed records, some people have actually contributed records, first records for India on this website. Many people have contributed first record for Western Ghats on this website in different states for the first time. Completely new forms for the first time. So when you consider all this new information that has been generated because of this website, in every single case we have an authorship given to those people, and people definitely appreciate that a lot. Even when you say, you know, amateurs, they don't really gain anything from it. When people see their name on a website like this, they actually feel proud, and that has been one of the strengths of this website, where unlike many other citizen science websites where people who created it get all the credit and others don't, here we try to give credit for everything. We distribute the credit wherever it's deserved, and that kind of credit, I think, helps citizen scientists get more encouraged, get more serious about contributing here. And some people have been quite competitive about this. They're like, am I going to contribute more images than that other person I like or hate? And there's this healthy competition which actually feeds into this project, which is great because then everybody benefits in the end. So there's that, and I was saying, in this particular species, there are 3 subspecies in India, and they're all represented in different colors here. So earlier people knew approximately what occurs where. This is a beautiful way of illustrating where these things occur. And again, each spot is not only a visual thing, this is actually into a database. So if you're interested, there are various things that we use in scientific research, called niche modeling is one of them. Based on the existing data sets, you try to predict where you're going to find that butterfly in other parts which have not been surveyed. That's one way of using it. The second way of using it is you say where are all the habitats and whatever this butterfly requires. Look at the map and see where that where those requirements are met, satisfied for that species. And then you say, going forward, we know climate change is happening, we know things are going to be substantially different in some cases 50 years from now compared to what we know now. Where are those butterflies going to be? For that kind of predictive modeling, you could use a lot of this information. So one particular record that you have gathered, one picture, let's say, that you have taken, may not mean much to you, especially if it's a regular picture. If it's a beautiful picture, sure, you'll value it much more. If it's a regular picture, it's just one picture for you. But 1,000 of you come together and produce this. This is an awesome resource for everybody, right? In India, since we didn't have this information, and now anybody asks, where is this? When does it occur? We say this is where it is. This is a fairly good map in terms of where these things occur. And that's the kind of power we would like to have for this website, where we not only generate resources for now, perhaps for a lot of future studies as well as enjoyment. And that is again something that people, I think, value a lot. Research is something that might happen. The research is a very slow process. To get a paper out, it takes several years, whereas people can see things right away. And people also see beautiful images right away. We are very particular about the quality of images that we upload here. And of course, we don't want the absolutely topmost grade quality of images. We do accept normal looking images as well, as long as they show the butterfly pretty well. But we are developing a module where we will be able to take records without actually importing an image. So if you don't have a good image, but you have a good record, we can still incorporate that. So that will happen. And then the number of spot records there, we'll actually change that from number of images. Actually, we might keep number of images, and then we'll have a separate entry called perhaps number of spot records or database entries, and that number is going to climb very, very fast, and I'll tell you why. So this is generally the structure that we have been working on. I will show you, there's a fairly extensive list of Lavelos plants. You can browse it by family. You can just search for a plant, find it, and when you click on any particular plant, let's say this particular one, there is only one picture, but you can see what the flowers look like, what the leaves look like. You can just go somewhere else. Let's say I'm just going to randomly click on something and see whether something has more images. So let's click on the first one and see what is there. So this is a picture of the pod of this particular plant. Here you see leaves and flowers swell, and here's a close-up of the flowers, and so on and so forth. So this will help you identify the plant quickly, and especially when you don't know the plants very well, but you want to know where to find the caterpillars of this butterfly. On the species pages, you can just click here, go to that butterfly and see what the caterpillar looks like. And here you can see what the plant looks like. So you already have a search image in your head before you go to the field. You know what kind of plant you're looking for and what kind of caterpillar you're looking for. So you have much better chances of finding it when you go to the field than if you're just randomly searching, right? So that's the beauty of this website. It's a very hard-won development, I would say. You don't see this kind of stuff on other websites, right? So we have thought a lot about this. Coding is a fairly serious aspect of it, and Punindu Roy here, listed here, he is the one who has coded all of this. A pretty amazing guy. He had a shop in London where he just taught himself how to create websites. And this is a fairly serious website. Even for software engineers, this is a pretty good website. In terms of challenge in coding, and this guy just did it in his spare time, and he has continued to do it along with others. And if you go to these are the editors. So the first one is me, Pushpamay Kunte, Sanjay Sondi, who used to be in corporate sector. He retired several years ago, much earlier than his regular retirement age, because he decided he had made enough money and he wanted to devote all his time advancing natural history and, much more importantly, conservation in India. So he just took early retirement and he has completely devoted his time and resources and everything really to this work. And then Punindu, I told you about, again, amazing naturalist. Every single website that I'm going to talk about has this extremely talented editorial team, and of course a great support team, because of which all of this is possible. If you go to About Us, there is this BOI website team, and these are all the people who are involved in this, and each one of them is a pretty solid person, both in terms of what they know about butterflies, how serious they are about contributing to this website, and to the citizen science movement in general. And many of them young ones, like Medha Rao here. Girish is not here yet, but he should have been. Some of these people are going to become professional biologists, others will stay amateurs, but I think each one of them is going to have a massive contribution to science through the citizen science initiative. So I'm really, really proud of all these people. Alright, so that's about that. Under extras, you can look at all the publications we have. So far, how many do we have? 12 publications, a few books and some solid papers. These are, 70-80 page papers. These are monographs of butterflies from certain biodiversity hotspots. And then you have rediscoveries of several species. You have descriptions of some new species and so on and so forth. So all the publications of this website are listed here. And then you have bibliography, web resources. These need a lot more improvement, and you can also see how the website has developed with all the landmarks, milestones. So you can see the number of species, number of images growing, number of species pages growing, and we have a version system with which you will know exactly which version you're looking at. So a lot of things. It's a fairly formal website. As you can see, we have citations for all pages. We have a formal version history there, and a lot of papers have cited this website. I have cited a lot of pages from this website in my own papers, and in fact earlier this year we published a very good scientific paper, the first figure of which was completely based on information from this website. So it's contributing fairly seriously to scientific research papers and books. And many of the records, for example, when I showed you publications, here for example, this particular butterfly that was rediscovered, there was already a link to the species page on the website, in the paper, and the species page was up. So we have a lot of these links already made, which becomes much easier to refer to in the future. Somebody had, yes?
Your website is not so friendly on mobile, but my main question was, when you click on extras, you list, you just click on extra, it will list you all the butterflies by states. I see.
Great.
I see there are many regions that are not part of India,
Like what?
like Uva province.
Okay.
So
I'll tell you, initially we were taking images only from India, but recently several people from Bangladesh and Bhutan, and now more recently Nepal, asked us whether they can upload images, because they don't have anything like this in their countries. So we said sure. So some of the images you will see will be from there, and some of the, not images but records, and some of the records that you will see will be from very far off places. The reason for that is, for some species, let's actually pull up something, then this will become clear. Actually under extras, these are all the numbers that come up. I will maybe tonight or in the next few days put up links to all the extras, links that are there. So with this kind of places, what happens is, some of the species pages, let's say, what would, oh I know, Diarrheucus indica for example. So here we have images of specimens, and these specimens are from the Natural History Museum. The BMNH on top is British Museum of Natural History, which is where type specimens of most Indian species are, and they have massive collections. They have in all 10 million specimens from all over the world of just butterflies. Their total collection is some 70-80 million specimens. So whenever we have uploaded images from NHM onto the website, and we have about 3,000 images of Indian butterflies from Natural History Museum alone, and then have several more from other museums. And we have got permission to upload all those pictures on our website, so eventually you will see all those images there. And this is from India. This particular specimen is from India, but for very rare species where Indian records are just 1 or 2, and those specimens are either in bad condition or they are unknown now. We don't know where they are situated. But to illustrate those species, we have taken images of specimens which were collected somewhere else and put them up, and of course we have distribution record data for that specimen. So something like Hua province will be one of those records where, and I can quickly look it up in the database and find out where the Hua province record is from. But I guarantee you it will be one of these northeastern species where we have very few records in India, and we have put up a butterfly image like that, which was a specimen collected from Hua province. So that is where it comes from. But records from Bhutan, Bangladesh and Nepal now come from Myanmar ones are also like this. Sri Lanka, I don't...
There was one.
There was one? Okay. It will also be a specimen based from NHM London, and these are 100-year-old specimens. This one is from 1904. 27 or 24? 24.
1904 on the bottom.
Okay, so that's 04, not 24. Okay, from here I thought it was 24. So that's 1904. That is how old that specimen is. Right? So you'll see this for a lot of species. At least some 30-40 species as museum specimen images up. But eventually we'll have it for all Indian butterflies. And we have images for all Indian butterflies like this. So right now our bottleneck is how many images can we peer review and upload, and how many images can we put up like this. Actually, we have volunteers who can help us with museum specimen images. Right now we are not doing that because I'm trying to finish 2 books, and those are major books. Once they are out, then we will actually engage a lot more into developing this website. But until then, we want to go a little bit easy on this. And this is actually, when you compare it with other websites, this is not going easy. This is a fairly serious resource, way better than you will find anything for Asia for sure. And this is certainly one of the more prominent websites in the world. You can try to find websites in different parts of the world. You don't have something as comprehensive as this, something as growing as this for, let's say, UK, which is probably the country with the best butterfly records. They do have way more records than what we have, but they don't have it organized like this and accessible like this. US has a pretty good website, Butterflies of America's wonderful website, and a strength of that website is that they also have images of most type specimens, or rather than saying most type specimens, I should say they have type specimens of most species up there on that website, and that's a real strength. People want to see type specimens for taxonomic purposes, not perhaps for citizen science work, but definitely for taxonomic purposes. So that website is important for that reason. But there are not too many other websites which are like this, which are so comprehensive, so formal, so reliable. So this is a beauty. And recently, because of all of these developments, people have approached us saying, can we have a website on moths? And we said, sure. And they said, can we have a website on reptiles? And I said, sure. And this is the latest one. We launched it just 2 weeks ago.
Already has 243.
Latest, what do you call it? News? Yeah, latest news. So 21st of August it was launched then, and we have 2 more websites coming up. Somebody came and said, can we have it on cicadas? And we said, sure. So now it's a family of 5 websites: butterflies, moths, cicadas, odonates, dragonflies and dancerflies, and then reptiles, and several more are coming up. So this has grown from one solid website into a nice small family of websites, and we hope to see this family grow. And hopefully people will get inspired from this, and perhaps this will spread to other countries. So I'm hoping that that will happen. Anyway, I'll take a break here because I will introduce you the website and all the work that we have done. I will also tell you how we have used these, or maybe I'll do that and then I'll stop for some Q&A, and you can tell me your stories. I want to hear from you as well. With this, we have given forest departments in at least 2 states, Karnataka and Arunachal Pradesh, a lot of material. Because everybody contributes images and spot records from everywhere, including these 2 states, we have been able to come up with fairly comprehensive checklists for those states, and also fairly comprehensive information about where these things occur, at what time they occur. And we have compiled all of this information. For butterflies, Sanjay Sondhi and I have written several papers and books in which we have compiled this information, and we have passed this on to the Forest Department, which is the administrative body which handles all conservation issues as well as management of wild habitats in India. And many of these papers, some of this information has become part of what we call a management plan for several national parks and wildlife sanctuaries in India. So it's not only a citizen science project, this has also contributed to actual government functioning in at least these 2 states, and hopefully we'll be able to replicate that across the entire country. So this has had some fairly serious consequences for on-ground conservation through all the information that we have generated. And when I say we, every single contributor who has ever contributed anything to this website. So the real strength of this is in the compilation, again not in individual records, but when, as I said, 1,000 of you come together, that becomes a fairly serious group and also a resource. So we have been riding on that. And of course some of this has contributed to books even written by other people. People did not have information, and our website has made all of that information accessible to everybody. So this helps not only research that we do and popular writing that we do, it will also help other people do that, which is great. So anyway, that's what we have done with this. Our major goal in starting from October is we are going to have meetings in different cities in India, where we'll advertise this in local newspapers, on Facebook, on various social media and other outlets, and we'll get people together, and we are going to start accumulating observations on a much more massive scale, where people who are involved in this seriously will go to these places and connect with local groups much more. It is true that social media brought the entire world together, but face-to-face interactions are still way better than what you can do on Facebook. Unfortunately, Facebook and that kind of social media also breed a lot of trolling, which doesn't happen when people actually meet. Everybody understands that at a deeper level, most of us share common goals and visions and goodness we want to spread, but somehow when they get online, something happens to them, as I'm pretty sure you know, even in Singapore. And that's worse in India, it's worse in US, for example. So that happens, but the big challenge is now, how do we rally people around these common visions and common resources, which are good for everybody, whether you like somebody or not, whether you like something or not. This is still a national resource for us, and you could potentially build something for Singapore. So that's where we are headed. Actual campaigns on ground, connecting with people, having face-to-face interactions, and that might turn out to be the next big phase that will contribute to steep growth of data for this particular website and all the other websites that I showed you earlier. So anyway, I'll stop now. If you have any questions, if there's anything.
Maybe we have time for a few questions in the next 5-10 minutes.
Yes.
That's okay.
Biodiversity. Like how do you differentiate between subspecies?
Oh, that is actually a little bit of a complicated question, and I just spoke about it for an hour. It will become slightly academically more involved. So all I'll say is that subspecies are geographically structured populations which show some morphological features that deserve a name. Okay, but they're reproductively compatible with other such populations, or are supposed to be, and therefore they're still part of the same species. Species, 2 or more species, are often what we call reproductively incompatible, meaning that they might hybridize sometimes, Some of them might produce fertile offspring, but most of them don't, and therefore they can't really exchange a lot of genetic material with each other. This is the classical understanding. The more modern understanding is more nuanced, more complicated, but I won't burden you with that, burden everybody with that. If you want to know more about it, you can talk to me later. The most recent study that we have finished, actually we are on Cicada's website, I'll go back to the butterflies website, so that's what we have in front of our eyes. So what we do is look at genetic data and use phylogenetic methods to figure out what are the cohesive structures that we have, cohesive groups that we're going to call species, and then everything within that is subspecies if it's named. That's the simple rule of thumb that we use. It's a fairly involved process. The phylogenetic methods are quite complicated. The genetic data we generate is also quite comprehensive, and most of the decisions are based on that. Traditionally, what people did was they used structures of male genitalia to figure out what was like each other and what was unlike each other. And the unlikes were called different species, similars were called subspecies. That is how a lot of it has been organized in the past. But that's a highly subjective call. When you have more genomic data sets and phylogenetic methods and population genetic methods indicating what are cohesive clusters and therefore distinct species, I think that's where we are headed in terms of scientific growth in the future. So we do that, and we are doing it increasingly for Indian butterflies too.
Even the subspecies of the pea blue in India.
Subspecies of?
Pea blue. And Pyllis
No, there is no subspecies.
But then there are about 30 over names that are called differently, synonyms to that species.
So we do have synonyms listed in some places, and we're going to have all synonyms listed probably by next year. But Leptotus, the pea blue that you mentioned, it doesn't have any named species throughout the world, not just in India. So there we haven't listed any.
That's why I asked the question.
Yes. But we, so you said, is there subspecies listed?
I guess not.
Oh yeah,
Just asking.
Exactly, sure. So that field remains blank or without information with a line that there are no subspecies. So what you're looking at is pea blue, and the line there will be no subspecies are listed under the species. So only when there are some subspecies listed you will see that, otherwise you will see this line. Yes. Throughout the world, not just Singapore and India.
Could you talk more generally about the process, or rather the framework and the logistics needed to put together the website? In terms of funding, you showed you have the NCBS and the USAID funding, and how was that thought about, materialized, and on a day-to-day basis, how does the website run, given that it's peer reviewed?
So we have a separate URL for submitting observations. So you have to create an account, register, the second link here, and once you do that with whatever email address or social media that you want to use, you can enter. Unfortunately, I can't do that here right now, but when you enter, we have a wonderful interface to upload images. It's one of the most user-friendly interfaces I've seen on websites like this, where you can upload several images at a time, but each one a separate spot record, because that is how it's going to get database. And you can of course change entries at any point before and after they get published online, and that's how it works. So we simply click names that we agree on and then suggest names if we think something is not properly identified, so we can just very quickly process a lot of these things. So that's how images are contributed by people from wherever they are. There is a separate URL to review, so instead of submit observations, we will have review observations, and we'll just go through that, and then we publish these images online. So that is how this whole thing works. On a daily basis, people are uploading images from all over India and actually South Asia now, because we have people uploading information from especially Nepal, Bhutan and Bangladesh. So We have at least several dozen images uploaded, I think, every week. And then whenever I get time, as PIs, as scientists, we actually get quite busy a lot of times when I really cannot spend any time. But there are two things which are on my side. A, I don't have kids, so all the time that people have to spend raising kids, I can spend on the website and other naturalistic things that I do. And I don't watch TV, which saves me again several hours every day, which again I spend on my work, other work that I do, like the websites. So that helps me spend a lot of time on doing things that I really like, for which other people don't find time, but somehow I manage to. But when things get really, really tough, we have that entire team that I showed you. It's not just me and Poon to do everything. Rohan Lovelaker is another pretty solid person. All these people are listed in the team members under About Us. So Rohan, Hemant, and now more recently Girish, Nitin, all these people you have heard of or met when Anuj visited India. There is Ashok Sen Gupta, there are several people. And they all now do peer review. They're all well trained enough that they can handle most of the species. So they have taken up a lot of review of images. So they approve those images and then they get imported. So on a daily basis, people are uploading images and now reviewing and publishing images. That's the entire daily operations. Then once in a while, Poonendwar and I are going to think of, oh, here's an idea. Why don't we develop that? That's how the nectar plants and lavalos plant module grew. That is also how the maps grew. That is how a lot of other features that you see on the website grew.